Hey guys, welcome back to Excuse My Language, but today I've got my dad here. This is our first time doing a podcast together. Say hello.
Hi.
Yeah. So the biggest thing I tell everybody I do podcasts with is just that we're just having a conversation. So
Sure.
this is more long form for anybody that wants to hear us talk. So it's not an interview, it's not questions, it's just we want to talk. And today's topic, so I've been wanting to have this conversation with you for a while now.
Okay.
Because I came across this document where it gives a lot of stats and figures for spinal cord injury. And
In this document you have is the updated one I had when you first had injured. I saw the same document, but it was probably published 5-7 years before this one, probably 2012.
Gotcha.
So the numbers have gone up, but not a ton.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure some of them would be, just different in general.
Well, they still give across the same communication to me when I look at it,
Right.
is that there are very, very few new cases of SCI every year. And there's even fewer people who actually live with SCI in the United States. I mean, you're talking less than 500,000 people.
So that's kind of where we can start. So the first section here is incidents. So it says there's 17,730 new cases of SCI every year. And
So the previous report, that number was 12,000. And when I look at that number, it says, so this is 17,730, which is only up 5,000 from the last report.
right.
But, the bigger number is, it says approximately 54 cases per 1 million people in the United States, or about 17,000.
Right.
Now, what this doesn't take into account, of these 17,000, it doesn't say how many of those are quadriplegics on ventilators.
So, well, we get that information later. It shows that, but that last sentence is kind of interesting to me though, because it says new SCI cases do not include those who die at the location of the incident that caused the SCI. So that takes out a lot of people in my circumstance.
Exactly.
Because C1, C2 on event, many of them don't survive. And I would like to know that number. It's unfortunate that this document doesn't really include the deaths, because it would be interesting to know which ones are C1, C2 that survived and which ones didn't, and how many there could have been.
I wonder if they really know, if a person dies, if it's a car accident,
Right.
can they be 100% sure they died from the spinal cord injury, or did they die from other injuries?
Good question, because even Kirk Patterson, he fell out of a deer stand and was laying there for 9 hours before they found him. And it's okay, so did he?
He was rare.
Right, but he survived. He survived after 9 hours. And it's okay, so the ones that did die, it's
Well, he survived 9 hours. I mean, he was able to get oxygen. He was able to
right, but that
Whereas
means
most who die aren't able to breathe.
right. So but you don't know if they could have survived, or if
they got treatment right away like you did, yeah.
Yeah, so you just don't know.
Yeah, it's just unknown. But here's what we do know. So, and to me, this is when we talk about numbers, okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there are, north of 300 million people in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay. And so when you take that number, it says, this was based in 2019. It says the population was 328 million. I believe last thing I saw was 334 for my business.
Okay.
334 million people. And if you look at that, just off the numbers on this report we're looking at, you got 17,730 new spinal cord injury cases this year, out of 300 plus million people. So you're talking.
And then that section below there, I think that's what you're saying, referring to is that. The next one says that there's roughly 249,000 to 366,000 people.
Well, that was my next point. But my first point was that the number of new incidents per year, is a small number in comparison to the population.
Right.
Right? You're talking even at 17,000. And then you say, okay, and then as you move up the thoracic to the neck, as far as where the injury occurs, that number drastically drops, I'm sure. Now, we can't quantify that because we don't have that number, but we can use our own common sense or assumption just based on what we know, that the majority of people out there with forms of paralysis are paras, not quads.
Well, go ahead and scroll down. So here's where it breaks down that. Scroll down more. Yep, cause. Or, there we go. Yeah, neurological level and extent of lesion. So it talks about. So incomplete tetraplegia is 47%. Almost half are all incomplete quads, meaning that they might not even be fully paralyzed. It might just be a spinal cord injury of some sort, where they're like, it might be incomplete, where they have some function, or it might be incomplete to where they have a lot of function, or they're able to recover over a period of time or not recover. And then you have 20% of incomplete paras. So it's a very small percentage.
Well, if you notice, a complete and an incomplete para is about equal. They both are about 20%. Whereas with quads, it's
50%,
48% incomplete. Whereas you got like 12.3%. That's the category you'd fall in, which is complete. Right. So if you take 12% of 17,000, we get an estimated number of you, right? So if we take 17,730 times 12%, so you're talking maybe 2,100 new cases a year.
Right.
So that if that was a disease, you would be considered having a very rare disease, right?
Sure.
Right? Because 2,000 out of 334 million, right? A year.
Yeah.
That's a pretty low number. I mean, there are things that are probably just as rare, if not more, but that's pretty low. Yeah. And so because of that, there's so much data out there. There's so much unknown.
So if you did the same number for the paras too, because we're going to see the difference of like paras compared to quads. And
so all the numbers for paralysis is going to be low.
Right.
We've already established that 17,000 new cases a year out of 334 million.
Right.
Now we're saying out of that 17,000, only 2,000 are quads. That means the other 15,000 are paras or
no, because it was 20% are complete paras. So the complete paras are like, it's about 2,500. It's still low. Yeah, both really low, and it's just like So you got 2,000, but like the price difference of those two is pretty significant. That's why I want to show like the difference of that, because it is kind of crazy that you have 2,000 quads, 2,500 paras roughly, and it's like, geez, and these are complete, and it's like you got more incomplete and whatnot. There's just wide range of everything, but it's like, so go ahead and scroll down.
Sure.
And it's like the cause is kind of interesting. So you have this number of injuries every year, and 40% of all spinal cord injuries is from vehicular car crashes. And then the next one at 32% is falls, which is what I would be. And then you got violence, the next highest, sports.
And violence is not a huge number compared to everything. You have 40% cars and accidents, vehicular as they put it. Falls at 32, and then violence is 13.5.
Right.
Sports drops down to 8, medical 4, and others 3%. So I guess I'm still. So to me, the part that really has to sink in is people's totality. Okay, we start here.
Right.
Okay. You only have 17,000 new cases on average a year of any type of spinal cord injury. And then we start breaking it down. You know, we could talk about the paras and all that kind of stuff, but just talk about what you are, the quad. Of that 17,000, only about 2,000 of your quads who survive. You know, I'm sure there's many more, but like we already established, they don't survive often if it cuts off their breathing because they don't get treatment in time. So a couple of things to know about this. Number one is because it's such a low number. You know, they establish how much of the taxpayer dollars gets divvied up to research every year, and it's based on you know, the number, you know, how impactful it is to the population. In other words, like the more people who have heart issues, the more money they're going to put at research, or cancer or diabetes. Those are big numbers of the population, so they get the most money. But when you talk about something like what you have, there's the reason why so much fundraising has to be done, both for research and how to live with the condition, because there's just very few of you.
Yeah.
So there's very little resources being allocated to this condition. To me, that's one of the biggest things I get from this is like, wow, if we only got 17,000 new cases a year, and more importantly, if there's less than 400,000 people at any one time on this earth or any country with an SCI. I mean, you're talking just barely over 250,000 out of 334 million. You got just a little over 250,000 people with any form of paralysis that's alive.
Right.
That's still a small number compared to the population.
Totally. And it's like, it's
an underserved population because of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like, it's such a low number, like, but it's still very common. As far as like being out in your community, how often will you recognize? And it's different for us here being in Michigan because auto no fault for so many years, and you probably had a large number of those, more in Michigan than in other states.
Possibly
that you would see out in public.
Yeah.
That you would actually have experience with people.
Well, the other unique thing about it is that even though we have, which is up now, but it's still a relatively low number of 17,000 new incidents a year.
Right.
When given the opportunity to get the right care, right, to be afforded the right care, which, like you said, here in Michigan, through auto no fault or through lawsuits, a lot of people are able to pay for the level of care that allows them to survive their injury. If allowed to be administered the right type of care, people in your condition can live a very long life. So that's where even though there's only 17,000 new cases a year, that's why there's still 363,000 people with paralysis that's living in our country. And that's
the part that kind of blows my mind, is because we're seeing it all the time. The level of care almost seems to be diminishing, but then at the same time, technology and the medical improvements on people with these types of injuries being able to survive and live and work and do things, it seems to be increasing in my eyes.
Well, you're pretty fortunate for your injury to happen when it did, because technology is at all-time high, obviously. And there's a lot of things that you and people in your condition now today can do and establish levels of independence than they couldn't do even 15, 20 years ago. Right. Even hell, when your injury first had, a lot of the environmental controls advanced so quickly that we've gotten rid of the stuff we originally had.
So much so, like the first time we got my room set up with environmental controls, it cost like $10,000.
Oh yeah.
And now you can go buy bulbs on Amazon to control your lights.
Get you a couple of Echoes and some switches, some smart switches, and you can do it all yourself now. Yeah.
And it's not difficult to do any of that, and it's like, so if we can make a difference and get more allocated resources to people.
Well, that's the thing. Like there was times where the medical profession and insurers understood that, if you look at a health policy, they most of them, like a PPO, whether you get 80, 20, 90, 10, 75, 25, deductible on your insurance, almost all of them, at least most of the ones we've had, always have, 100% for preventive. So if you're going to get your physicals and your checkups, and if women going to get their womenly checkups every year.
How much of it is preventive?
Anything that's preventive, they'll cover 100%. So like a physical.
Oh,
wow. Womenly things that they do I don't want to say pap smears. I don't know what they are, but they're prenatal, not prenatal, but just preventive medical exams. Usually, I guess I have to pull out the policy to give you a list of them, but there's a lot of things that are covered 100% because they consider it preventive. That if you do these things, that you'll prevent, or certain things from developing or something like that.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing about that to me is that they haven't your accident costs over $1 million by the time you get out of the hospital.
So here, let's scroll down and before we get to that, something I did want to cover up there. So lengths of stay here. So acute care which is like the initial injury, if you're in the ICU, if whatever that time span of care has declined from 24 days to 11 days.
Yeah, I'm looking at that, and I think that's, depends on the level of your injury.
Yes, that's
so. If you're,
yeah,
if you've taken out your legs or something, and you're going to leave the hospital paralyzed, not a quadriplegic but paraplegic, I can see 11 days in the ICU and then another 30 days of rehab just to get you ready to be discharged, and you can leave in 40 some days. But as a quad on a ventilator, I can't see that happening.
No, that's the average. I'm just pointing out the average, and then you can imagine, for a quad like me. So for me particularly, this was in 2010, and I spent about 30 days in the ICU and about 60 days in rehab. And then, but just for these numbers, they're saying overall. Like, for me, it's just the fact that these numbers are declining, which might seem like a good thing, but at the same time, it's lowering the amount of time you have to learn about your circumstance, in my eyes. Like,
well, I mean,
to them, it seems like a good number because it's costing them less.
I guess, yeah. Always the technology and the money and all that plays a fact. My point is that whether it's 30 days, 45 days, 90 days, is that from the time you enter to the time you exit for the injury like yours, at least when your accident happened, they spent over $1 million, right? And my argument has always been, so why would you spend over $1 million to save a life and then not make the investment to maintain that life, right? To make sure it has a quality life. It's proven, like, and I can get doctors, friends of ours who can tell this part of the story, but, without getting the proper care outside the hospital, a person in your condition usually go back to the hospital 2 to 4 times a year. And anytime you arrive at the hospital, it's an instant ICU care stay because you're on a ventilator. So since you're on a vent, they can't put you in a regular room. They got to put you somewhere somebody can watch the vent. That drastically raised the cost. So I don't know what an ICU stay costs per se, but from what I've been told, is god awfully expensive. And if that's the case, I would imagine going to the hospital with an ICU stay 4 times a year would probably be as much, if not more, than what we pay for quality nursing care for you year round. So my argument would be is that by paying for the nursing care, you actually are saving the insurer a lot more money, especially if that person is kept healthy. And I mean, how many times have you been back to the hospital since your accident for overnight?
How about twice?
Twice?
Overnight? 3 times.
3 times.
3 times. And one time was because of pneumonia. One time was because of a really fluke accident where I inhaled a piece of my stylus and had to get it surgically removed.
Out of your lung?
Out of my lung, and which was absolutely insane.
Hey, we still have it. Look at that.
Right here.
A little souvenir.
Which, if anybody,
that bad boy was in your lung.
If anybody wants to help me turn this into a bracelet or necklace, I really want to.
You do, don't you? I know. What was the third time?
Third time was recently. I went septic for a UTI.
Yeah.
Which, but all those, that's going to become significant.
But the things people usually go in the hospital for in your condition is bowel issues?
No. No, scroll down. So we're going to get to that. But first, I want to show, so what you're talking about, rehospitalization. I've been in 3 times. And this right here says since 2015, about 30% of persons with SCI are rehospitalized 1 or more times during any given year following injury. And those hospital stays are an average about 20 days. That's insane. That's insane that you're spending, anyone with an SCI, 30% of persons with an SCI 1 or more times a year. And it's like, how much? Yeah, like you're saying, why not pay for the
well, yeah. So the question is, if you're there, if you're there twice, it's 40 days. How much does that cost per day in ICU?
Right.
Right. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know what they charge.
I've heard of numbers. One day in the hospital is about $8,000.
So I don't know for sure. We have to talk to somebody. Depends on the hospital, I guess.
Right.
It could be 8. It could be 2. But the point is that it's a lot. It costs a lot, and you're living proof that if given the right care in the home, you can drastically minimize. They're talking two or more times per year. You've been injured now. This is your 14th year. It's been 14 years since your accident, and you've had a total 3 times. And some of the things that are more common, like not the things you went to the hospital for, the things that are more dangerous is.
Well, it says it right there. So
Well, let me tell you what I know.
Okay.
Impact bowels is a big one. Not having a good bowel regimen, which we do because we have a good team. General, beat it. Mr. Barklot, go on. I've personally known people who have had to go back to hospital because their bowels are impacted, and that's a huge one. That's very dangerous. And the next one is, a lot of common times without the proper care, people in your condition, can be deadly, is pressure sores.
So those are the 2. It says diseases of the genitourinary system, which I don't know if bowel falls in that. I know, that's also UTIs. And then the followed by disease of the skin, which is pressure sores.
That's a kiss to death with the pressure sores from the inside out, and that's lack of movement and lack of care. But my point is that when given the right care in the home, all those things are avoided. And if those things are avoided, now you live a quality life. And if you can live a quality, healthier life, not only is that better for you, the family, and the society as a whole, but it's also good for the insurer as far as cost, because the healthier you are, it's almost like you get punished for being healthy. Like if you utilize the nursing and make sure you have 24-hour care and hire good nurses and have a good routine in the house to operate under preventive medicine, doing things to prevent these issues before they arise. It's almost like you get punished for that, because now you got to fight to get the coverage and get the people paid what they need to be paid in order to be there every day for you. And it seemed like they'd want to be just the opposite. It's always amazed me that, when you were under Blue Cross Blue Shield, they literally found a reason to dispute your case every 6 months. Like clockwork. Every 6 months. It was, and you get in the mail saying they're not paying your claims for your nursing bill that we've already ran up because the nurses have already worked. And it used to always kill me that the first thing to say is due to lack of insurability. Like something changed. I like to do. I used to always wonder, do they know something I don't? Is he walking around at night or something? Did he miraculously get healed or something? But every time we fought, knock on wood, thanks to Centria Health and that team, they would help us fight it. And Greg over there, who was amazing. We'd eventually win, but win our disputes. And we were fortunate. We had good friends like the Woods who worked at Blue Cross Blue Shield and could point us in the right direction of who to talk to and who to file our complaints with and our appeals with. But all thing I could think about, Drew, is that A, on one hand, is getting my son everything he needed, and B, I felt bad because I just know what happens if you're someone who has a loved one who needs nursing care and you're expecting your insurance to pay for it. And all of a sudden they send you a letter and say lack of insurability, we're not paying anymore. Not everybody has the wherewithal to know they can fight that. Not everybody stands up to the insurer and go, hey, wait a minute, why not? And part of me feels like they're counting on that, because for every one family like yours that fights to keep you covered, there's probably 5 or 10 that don't have the bandwidth or the knowledge or the support to do something like that, and they just take it, and now they look at their loved one and say, I don't know what we're going to do, but we no longer have nursing care.
And even if they appeal it or fight it, you don't know how long that's going to take.
Right.
And for certain injuries on a
you don't have a day.
level, you don't have that time.
You don't have a minute.
And
yeah.
That's what happened with auto no fault. You had so many people being denied their care. It took 2 years to reverse it. And in those 2 years, you had thousands of people that died.
A lot. Yeah, a lot of people died.
Yeah. So
unnecessarily. People who were healthy in their injury were living. General. People who were living a quality life with their injury.
Right.
Who all of a sudden had it not only stripped away from them, that quality of life, but they were left for dead.
Yeah.
And, it was sad.
Yeah. And even those that didn't die, now they're in such health crisis that they have to be either in a hospital or a nursing home.
I think that's one thing people always fail to understand is they see you and they see how healthy you are. They don't know that you're still a day away from being in great health to being in extremely poor health. All it takes is one day of bad care.
Yeah.
One day of not being moved into bed, one day of not getting your regimen in, and all of a sudden you feel it right away. You go 3-4 days, you're sick. And I think people need to understand that when they see you and they see how healthy you are, that is a testament to the level of care you get daily from your staff and nurses and the routines we have. And fighting every day to make sure we can afford to keep that has been the key for your quality of life and your health levels. And it shouldn't be exclusive to you, and it shouldn't be exclusive to those who had lawsuits that they won or were auto no fault or whatever. If you're in this situation, you choose to live, there should be ways to support you to do so. And unfortunately, that's not always the case.
And it's not very far away either. It's not something out of reach because if you scroll down there, it talks about the lifetime costs. And it's like, and obviously some of these numbers are wrong.
Yeah, they're not right.
But this is...
they get the first year cost, right? The first year cost is...
That's what I'm saying. So
close.
The first year,
million.
1.1 million. And then look at the estimated lifetime cost. I remember you telling me about 5 million. About 5 million for 25 years old, man. And it's like, how many people do we know that? I don't know. 5 million doesn't seem out of reach.
The real numbers are, okay, if you're a quad on a ventilator to have 24-hour nursing, you got to figure that bill is north of $300,000 a year. Now, we don't pay that whole amount out of pocket, but we do pay enough. I mean, it's easy for us to pay $60,000, $70,000 a year just on that. Not for your medical supplies that the insurers choose not to cover, not to keep your vehicle running, not to keep your chair working, not to keep your environment and everything working. Yeah. Just for your staff. Just to have a staff every day so we can work and you can live and be healthy. It's north of 300,000, because they make $30 or more per hour, 35, 36. So when you see here that says high tetraplegia, C1, C4, $196,000 a year. That's, I don't know where to get that number. Maybe they're blending in because there are quads who are not on ventilators. So maybe they're mixing in that or something.
My thought there was that's just medical. That doesn't even count care.
Maybe that is. Maybe that's just medical.
Right. And if that's just medical, then like you're saying,
there's more like $500,000 a year.
Yeah.
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 But I don't think you have $196,000 worth of medical every year, do you? Well, physical therapy.
That they pay for.
Yeah.
Cost that they pay for my ventilator.
Yeah.
All my
physical therapy.
Urinary supplies.
Yeah. Your UTI checks and blood work and urine checks and
and that's got to be
probably runs over $100,000.
But you also have to think about people that aren't as healthy as me.
Right.
That also counts.
I think that's what lowers your costs is that we've been fighting so hard to keep you healthy. That there's a lot of things.
Because my cost medically is not $200,000 a year.
That's what I'm saying.
Someone who spends 40, 60 days in the hospital every year.
Right.
It is.
It's more probably.
Right.
Yeah.
So if the
the crazy thing though is we was able, what we're trying to do is get as many families as soon as they get out of the hospital to get on a routine you're on, so you can start on good health right away. It's like those families are going to be punished by the insurers, like, oh, you're healthy, you don't need us. Like, no.
Right.
To be healthy, we need your help.
Yeah.
Right. We need you to be willing to continue to spend money on us.
You must be doing well without us.
Right.
Right. Like,
yeah. So
no, I'm doing well because of you.
Yeah.
And if you could see it that way, then
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm amazed. Again, the part they got for you, it says first year 1.1 million. That's actually low because we spent 1.1 million just for your 90 days in the hospital.
Right.
So that first year was way more than 1.1 million.
Right.
But most of that was covered by your insurance. I don't want to make it seem like they never pay a thing. That was huge.
Right.
But I just always used to say to myself, okay, if you're going to spend $1 million to save a life, why would you not make the investment to maintain that life afterwards? Why would you fight on it every 6 months, have us fight over nursing care or fight over supplies and materials, durable goods that we need to care for you, or the quality of your chair to prevent pressure sores and things of that nature, and so you can get around because of your legs. And it just amazes me that they want to fight you tooth and nail on the things you need to survive in a healthy manner after they've just spent all that money for you to live.
Right.
You're gonna. So it seemed to me
that's a good
continued
argument,
investment.
But so that goes right into the next little subject there, life expectancy, and that's where they can justify it. Technically, for some,
Yeah.
So if you look at life expectancy, so that's funny. First thing it says at age of injury 20 for no SCI, so if you're fine. Average age expectancy about 80, and then if you go all the way to ventilator dependent, any level, for the person that survived for the first 24 hours, the life expectancy is 11 years. After that, so live to about 31.
Mm-hmm.
And then if for persons surviving at least 1 year after their injury, it immediately jumps to 18 years.
Well, according to that, you got 4 years left.
Right. And what blows my mind, though, that's the difference. Yeah. So if you watch the last podcast I did, where I talked about my friend Ryan, who just died recently, his was about a year and a half after his injury, and it's that right there that they're betting on. They're betting on that you don't live at least that first year. And then
they're betting on it, but maybe there's a justification for a lot of things.
Maybe, or I don't know about betting on it, but it's just so unfortunate.
Well, listen to this. So it says historical cause of death. Persons enrolled in the National SCI database since its inception in 1973 have now been followed for 45 years after injury. During that time, the cause of death that appear to have the greatest impact or on reduced life expectancy for this population is pneumonia and septicemia.
So any disease that leads to you going septic, which is an infection in your bone from a pressure sore or a UTI that goes septic. Mm-hmm. So septic.
It says mortality rates are declining for cancer, heart disease, stroke, arterial disease, pulmonary embolism, urinary disease.
It's basically saying all the other causes are decreasing, but there has been no change in the mortality rate for septic in the past 45 years, and there has only been a slight decrease in mortality due to respiratory pneumonia and things like that. That's that last highlight. There's been decrease in everything else, but there has been no change.
Yeah, so this just goes proof that if you get the right type of care, because none of these, none of these falling. You've been on a ventilator for 14 years and you're super healthy, knock on wood. But we work at it every day. You work at it every day, and if you keep the rest of the body healthy, you have less issues with pulmonary and urinary and digestive.
Absolutely.
And all those
like
type of
you
things.
said, I've been in the hospital 3 times, and 2 of them are because of those 2 things. One was pneumonia, and one was because I was septic. And other people, that is occurring more than once a year. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's been twice in the last 14 years.
Now, one can make an argument that one of their arguments is that there's probably a lot of people out there, they, pay for nursing, pay for all their care, and they still are in the hospital a bunch of times. So what I would say to that is that, what I notice in the insurance sector is that they take the one bad apple and leave it, and it rottens the whole barrel.
Right.
Which they should just learn the case by case. If you have a person like you, for example, who's maximizing the benefits and putting it to get used and using it to stay really healthy, instead of punishing, you should be rewarded. In my mind, rewarded to say, hey, you justify the money we're spending on you, so we're going to keep providing, we're going to keep spending because you're saving us money by keeping yourself healthy and staying out of the hospital. Versus someone else who is still going in the hospital 3, 4, 5 times. And maybe they can't help it. Maybe their condition is such that not only do they need the nursing, but they can have second and third, secondary and other injuries or conditions that they're dealing with.
Right.
And it's just what it is. You're fortunate to be as healthy as you are, but we work hard at it. But the bottom line is that, the insurers, are very reluctant to continue to pay what they need to pay. That's the reason why you have to fundraise and do all the things we have to do to make sure we fill that gap between what insurers or state or federal programs cover and what actually needs to be covered. And all I can think about is that for every one of us, there's 5 or 6 families who are misfortunate, and those loved ones are living a subpar life and dying a slow death, which is sad to me. It creates got to be a horrible household to live in, and the morale's got to be a lot of depression, I'm sure. Seeing somebody day in and day out just not at their best health, and there's not a whole lot being done to help it or change it or fix it.
Well, it also becomes each person with an injury is different too.
That's true.
I'm a fighter, and I've always been a fighter, somewhat because of you, but also just who I am. And
I like how you say somewhat because of me.
Yeah,
somewhat. All right, I'll take somewhat.
I would. I mean, you obviously know. I replicate that from you.
Well, a lot of people. Yes, you being the fighter is a big part of it, but you're also blessed because you didn't suffer any. Well, like you were in a car accident, you did a backflip, you landed, you broke just your neck. You got treatment right away to stabilize you, so you never lost oxygen, and it's just your neck. Whereas a lot of times you get people with a car accident, they didn't come out of it with just a broken neck or back. They came out with a lot of other injuries or a lot of other conditions from the accident. So each case is different, but that's why I think they should manage each case differently. You shouldn't look at them all as one, And I would say at the end of the day, anybody who's able to live through this condition in a home setting is better off than living in some facility, because one, none of the facilities are really equipped to care properly for someone on a ventilator who needs to be moved every hour or so, who needs to be up in their chair, needs to be moving around. You get in a facility, it's not for them to leave you for hours and hours on end in the bed. And that in itself will lead to a slow death, because that's where the pressure sores come and the mental trauma comes, because you're immobile. So if you're not able to provide the level of care someone like you would need in an institution, why not spend the money and invest to make sure they get that quality, that type of care in a home setting where people can be trained specifically for your needs,
Yeah.
But, we don't own an insurance company, so we don't know, what do we know, right? We just, I've always taught you and your siblings that, we play the games by the rule and the rules that are set forth until we work ourselves in a situation where we can make our own rules. So we're understanding what the rules are, playing the game by the rule, hopefully working ourselves in a situation where we can eventually make our own rules. And once we can do that, maybe we can help some other people make their own rules as well, like starting our own staffing company and, taking the money, the profit in there and reinvesting it into care. So there's a war chest, so to speak, building up for,
like you said, reward those that are doing what they need to do, who are continuing to fight, who are continuing to take care of themselves, take care of their family, take care of their bodies, and reward them with care.
Yeah, because make no mistake about it, if you live in life with a paralysis, your cost of life has gone up drastically. I mean, even if these numbers are accurate, you're talking, an extra, which is actually more, but here it shows an extra $200,000 a year on top of what you normally would need to live,
Right.
just for your condition. Which just is more like $400,000 or $500,000 for you, but that's on top of food, clothing, shelter, and anything else you do with your life, transportation.
Which takes us into a whole another topic, because if your annual expenses are already $200,000 on top of living, okay, how are you supposed to go back to work?
Yeah.
How are you supposed to? Because if
that's been the biggest issue for you, because we know you could work and hold down a job, but unless that job's paying you $500,000, you immediately lose. You use your benefits that pays for your nursing,
right?
And then the job's not going to pay you enough.
Think about that. I could have a $200,000 or a $250,000 based on these numbers. I could have a job that pays me $250,000 a year
before taxes,
and 50 of it is just for me. 200 of it is just to live.
Well, no. If you had a job paying $250,000 a year, you probably bring home about 170. So you still be short. You wouldn't have enough.
Short.
You'd be short.
What am I supposed to do?
If you wanted to live out $250, you had to make $350, and then you're right. Most of it would go to your nursing care.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of unfair.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I don't understand is why wouldn't they let somebody with such a severe condition, disability like yours, allow you to work and not put any cap on what you could potentially earn? If you can figure out a way to earn $100,000 a year from your chair, why do you still keep all your benefits? Why not? At least you're at least paying them back in the form of taxes a little bit,
right?
Versus just
being
just instead of taking all the time. Be nice if you could say, okay, you're paying for my benefits, but I am working, I am contributing, I am earning money to pay for my way of life. No, I'm paying taxes on that money.
Right.
So you're getting some back.
Something. You're getting something.
Yeah. I've never understood it. It's like,
right.
We give you this money, but you can't earn a dime. For every dollar you make, they'll take away.
Right.
So, I mean, it's
if I have more than $2,000 in my account, I lose all my benefits and everything.
Yeah, it makes no sense.
No.
Thank goodness we had some good friends. Taught us a lot of stuff in the beginning, like a special need trust fund. I mean, that was.
There's a lot of different ways around it, and we were very.
With no way we'd have known any of these things unless the right people came around and told us. Why would we? But there's certain things you have to have in place so you can still raise money and have the extra money you need for the other things you need without losing your benefits. And unfortunately, I don't think you should have to do all that. You should just be able to say, hey, I'm a quadriplegic on the ventilator. Okay, you qualify for getting every benefit you got coming. And if you figure out a way to work on top of that, more power to you, I'd be amazed to see how many more people in your condition would, because how many people we meet in your condition are some of the most positive people we meet all the time.
All the time.
Able-bodied people can learn things from you and your friends constantly. I mean, you guys get up every day with the help of others, the assistance of others. Your whole existence requires the assistance of others. Yet you had a better attitude, willing to work, grateful to do certain things than a lot of able-bodied people are. And instead of being rewarded for that, you're being told, hey, don't do too much of it. We got to take some things away from you.
Right.
To me, it seems unfair. But
I think that's one of the things I take away from my accident. It's just that so many people do have that attitude, because being in this situation, we become watchers. We become watchers looking outward and not always having our hands on.
Did our dog just knock on the door?
Yeah, he did.
Didn't it sound like a knock? And
He's definitely.
He's trying to knock.
He's trying to knock.
That's too funny. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, but we become watchers. We become observers. And when you observe a lot all the time, and you also have someone with you 24/7, you really do start to see the big picture.
Yeah.
And it gets rid of a lot of the negativity or victim feeling. It really does. You start to see the beauty of humanity, the beauty of life in general, and we want to keep living it. We just want to be a part of it.
Well, when I was a kid, I was severe asthmatic, and every time I went in the hospital, the minute I could hold my breath well enough where I could do normal stuff, I was just so grateful that as I got older, I didn't start growing out of my asthma until I was in my 20s. And I've always had a thirst for life because of it, because I know what it's like to not be able to walk from here to that wall without feeling like you're going to keel over because you're out of breath. And the minute you could, you realize how many people take the simplest things for granted.
Just for granted.
Just take it for granted.
Yeah.
And we focus more on what we don't have in life and less on what we do.
Right.
We focus a little more on what we can't do and less on what we can, or keeping up with the Joneses, comparing ourselves to other people. And it's kind of sad, because so many of us have so much to be grateful for, regardless of our current circumstances. It's unreal. But there's a lot of people out here who are fighting to live every day and have unnecessary obstacles thrown in their way, which kind of sucks, but we deal with it, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I might not say it enough, but I know everything I've been able to do is because of you.
Yeah.
And I know it's
well,
and
I
had a pretty great example of what it looks like to fight through unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah.
A pretty great example all my life. So.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah. And the great stepmom, she makes a lot of this all possible too. I couldn't have done it without her. But yeah, I guess God prepared me for this, and I didn't know He was preparing me for it. My dad and my parents are all very hard workers, and they raised us all to work and to find reasons why we can and not reasons why we can't. And I know the best thing I can do for you guys is especially for you after your accident, is to be the example of that in spite of your limitations, because no one should set limitations on themselves, and what I'm sure you've learned is that some of the best things you get out of life are the things that are the most difficult to achieve sometimes,
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
So
and we could talk forever.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you for finally
You're welcome.
Us doing this, and hopefully we can do more of it to where
Sure. Yeah.
Where we can talk about some of those things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the more attention we can bring to the disparity and the costs and the resources that are available, the better, because it really shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't be, the haves and the have-nots, especially in the disability world. It should be, different, I think. Hopefully we can do our part to help it change.
Right.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Hopefully.
Maybe somebody can help you make a necklace out of this thing.
Oh, my Lord. I want to so bad.
I know you do.
Yeah. But thank you guys. Thanks for listening to Excuse My Language, but with my dad, LeDon Clayborn. And we'll see you guys later.
All right. See you later. Thanks for having me.